In this video, we will look at coalitions and critical players. We will use the term coalition to describe any set of players that might join forces, they get together, and vote the same way. This is done all the time in politics. You've probably heard of it if you keep up with politics. Coalitions can have as few as one player. You could have a one-player coalition. It doesn't seem to be very powerful, but it could be if you're a dictator, or as many as all the players. If you have all the players, this is called a grand coalition. That means everybody in the entire voting system votes together the same way. Now, coalitions can change depending upon the topic, right? Like you and I might get together on one particular topic, but maybe on a different topic we don't get together. Maybe we form a different coalition. So players can be in multiple coalitions. They aren't just in one coalition, they can be in many coalitions. When we talk about coalitions, we're going to use set notation, okay? In mathematics, set notation is done when we use curly brackets, all right? So we're gonna use curly brackets. So here's an example. If I wanted player 1 and player 3 and player 7 to be in a coalition, I would just do that by putting curly brackets around them. Looks like a set, all right? I would say that that's a coalition. Player 1, player 3, player 7 may get together on a vote for some particular reason. Let's take a look at some examples, all right? Let's see, all right. Some coalitions have enough votes to win. Those are called winning coalitions, and some don't. Those are called losing coalitions. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have a voting system where the quota is 10, all right? And player number 1 has 4, player number 2 has 3, player number 3 has also 3, then we have 2 and 1 and 1, all right? Okay, so let's see. Well, there's no dictators, of course. Players can get together in many ways to be what we call a winning coalition. Let's take a look at an example. If we take player 1 and we take player 2 and we take player 3, that's enough to be a winning coalition. Why? Well, if you look at the weight of player 1, it's 4, and the weight of player 2, it's 3, the weight of player 3, it's 3. That's enough to make 10, which is our quota. So we call that a winning coalition. All right. Now, there can be coalitions that have some power, but they're not enough to be a winning coalition. All right. So an example would be like, what if you took player 1, player 3, and player 6? All right. If you look at the weights of those, that would be 4 plus 3 plus 1, which is 8. This is a losing coalition. Right? They may be able to influence the vote somewhat, but by themselves, they're not enough to be able to make a win. All right, those are just some examples. In a winning coalition, a player is said to be a critical player, right? It should be if the coalition must have that player's vote to win. There's a formula for this. We say P is a critical player for a winning coalition if and only if the total weight of the coalition minus the weight of player P is less than the quota. So let's take a look back at the example that we just did before. If we want to look at the total weight of that coalition that we looked at before, let's take a look at the one winning coalition that we had above, right? That was player 1, player 2, and player 3. The total weight would be 10. If we take the weight of player P, any one of the players, let's just look at player 1 as an example. Player 1 had a weight of 4. If we subtract 4, of course, that's 6. Is that less than the quota? Well, the quota up above, right? The quota in our example was 10. Certainly 6 is less than 10. So we say player 1 is critical. In fact, in that particular coalition, everybody's critical. You have to have everybody's vote. If you take anybody's vote out of this, since it's just 4 and 3 and 3, you're going to have less than 10. So everybody's critical. In bigger or large coalitions, not everybody may be critical. So let me give you a second example. Let's take a look at that same voting system up there, right? Let's take a look at a different winning coalition. Let's say it has a lot of players in it. Say a lot of people get together. Let's say we have player 1, we have player 2, we have player 3, we have player 4, and we have player 6. We have everybody but player 5. Right, if you look at the weight of this system, the total weight, it would be 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, which would be 13. All right, now, it is not required that we have 13 votes to win. Remember, our quota in the example that we're looking at only has to have 10 votes to be a winning, to be a win, to be passed. Okay, so some of these players aren't necessary, right? So, for example, if I got rid of player 6, would I still have enough? Well, if I examine that, I still have 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2, that's 12. I still have enough. So I don't think that player 6 is critical to this winning coalition, meaning they don't have to vote with me. But on the other hand, if I look at player 1, right? If I look at player 1 here, player 1 has a voting power of 4. If they don't vote with this winning coalition, then all that's left is 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. That's only 9, not enough. So what I would say is player 1, right? Player 1 to this is critical, because if they don't vote, it can't pass. But is anybody else critical? Well, what about player 2? Well, if player 2 doesn't vote here, they have a weight of 3, but everybody else does. That would be 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. That's 10. That's enough. So then everyone else really is not critical. Only player 4 was critical, meaning if they dropped out, then there was not enough votes. We'll take a look at some more examples below. So here's our first one, all right? Let's take a look at this weighted voting system. Quota is 100, all right? And we have only 3 players. That makes it a little less complex to look at. Player 1 has 99, player 2 has 98 weight, and player 3 has only a weight of 3. All right, so what are the possible ways that we can win in winning coalitions? Well, what I like to do is I like to look from the smallest possible to the largest possible. Like, can we have any one-player winning coalitions? Can anybody win by themselves? The answer is no. If we did, we'd have a dictator. So I don't have any one-player winning coalitions. All right, let's take a look at 2-player winning coalitions. Can I put 2 players together and it's enough? Well, absolutely. All right, so here are some possibilities. I could have player 1 plus player 2. Well, I don't want to put plus. I just want to put comma, player 1 and player 2. That would be a winning coalition, because 99 plus 98 is far more than 101. Is there another way we can get 2 players together to win? Sure, you could have player 1 and player 3. Right? Player 1 is 99 plus 3 is 102. That's enough to win. How about player 2 and player 3? Is 98 plus 3 enough? It is. 98 plus 3 is actually exactly 101. So you could even have player 2 and player 3 be a winning coalition. Any one of those possibilities. All right. And then there's also the grand coalition, right? Like, what if everybody is in the coalition? That would be all 3 players. Well, certainly player 1, player 2, and player 3 would be a winning coalition. All right. So we only have 4 possible different winning coalitions. Let's identify who's critical. All right. Critical. I'm going to circle them or highlight them, actually, if they're critical. Right. How are they critical? They're critical if when they are gone, there's not enough votes. And that would be true for any of the 2-player votes. If you take any one of these people out of the 2-player votes, there's not enough votes. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Like, it seems that maybe the last player is so weak they would never be critical, but they are. That's player 3. Let me take a look at why. Let's take a look at this second 2-player coalition. If player 3 does not vote yes, does player 1 have enough by themselves? No. That means player 3 is critical. They need to be there. So everybody, I'm going to circle everybody. I said I was going to highlight, but I guess I'll just circle. I'm going to circle everybody. Everybody is critical there. All right, so actually everybody's vote matters. But let's now take a look at the 3-player coalition. Is everybody critical here? If somebody drops out, can the other 2 players still make it up? Well, what if player 3 drops out? Can player 1 and player 2 still make it? Absolutely. 99 plus 98 is enough. So they're not critical. What about player 2? If they drop out, do player 1 and player 3 have enough? Well, yeah, that would be 99 plus 3. That's 102. That's enough. And what if player 1 dropped out? Would player 2 and player 3 have enough? They would, because 98 plus 3 is also 101. So in this particular winning coalition, nobody is critical, meaning they can drop out and they would still have enough votes to win. All right, so it's kind of a funny situation. So that can happen. All right. So by the way, you'll see later in this module why we're considering whether somebody is critical or not. If you are critical to a vote, it means that you have some power. So it's actually a measure of your power, one way to measure your power. Let's take a look at a little bit longer example. In this example, the quota is 10 and the players' weights are 6, 5, 4, and 2. So we have 3 questions here. 1, what is the weight of the coalition formed by players 1 and 3? That's just a matter of adding up their weights, right? Look at players 1 and 3. Player 1 has a weight of 6 and player 3 has a weight of 4. So what is the weight formed by their coalition? The coalition would be player 1, player 3, right? Weight equals 10, right? 6 plus 4. All right. By the way, is that a winning coalition? Yes, because it meets the quota of 10. All right, our job in part B is to write down all winning coalitions. Remember, there are losing coalitions. Like, for example, if you put players 3 and 4 together, 4 plus 2 would be 6. That's not enough. But what we're really going to concern ourselves with are just all the coalitions that win. So are there any one-player winning coalitions? Remember, we're always going to start there. And there is not, because we do not have a dictator. Okay, how about 2-player winning coalitions? Can we put any 2 together and it's enough to make 10? The answer is yes. All right. For example, we already had one, but let's go ahead and write from the start. If you put players 1 and player 2 together, 6 plus 5 is 11. That's enough. From above, right, from the example we just did, we already know that player 1 and player 3 is enough because that's equal to 10. Is there any other way to take 2 people and make 10? If you look carefully, you'll figure out there's not. Right? If you take, like, for example, the next 2 biggest would be players 2 and 3, but 5 plus 4 is 9. It's not enough. So those are the only winning 2-player coalitions. How about 3-player? Now, these can be tricky to find, but one way that I like to start is I like to start with what I already have, right? Like, I already know player 1 and player 2 win. That means that if I include them, right? For example, if I just write down player 1 and player 2, I can include a 3rd person and it will, of course, still be winning, right? So I could say player 1, player 2, and player 3, for example. I could also say player 1, player 2, and player 4. So I could tack on one more player and that would still be winning. You can do that with the next one as well. What about player 1 and player 3? If I add on another person, would it be winning? Of course, right? If I put player 1, player 3, that's already winning. I could tack on player 4. That would be a winning coalition. All right, and then you got to be really careful to look for any others that might exist. Notice that in the 3 I wrote down so far, they're all the possible ways to have a winning coalition with player 1 included. But now we consider, what if player 1 is not in the coalition? What if it's just player 2 and player 3? Well, we know that's not enough. That's 5 plus 4. But if you add player 4, that will give you up to 11, and that will be a winning coalition. So there are 4 different 3-player winning coalitions. All right, then the question is, which players are critical in the winning coalition? And remember that means that that if they drop out, there's not enough votes. Well, in the 2-player coalitions, you have to have everybody. I'm going to highlight both of those. Those are both critical. Everybody's critical in both of those. In the 3-player, remember that we added in player 3 in the first one. And so they aren't necessary. If player 3 drops out, we have enough. Right? So if player 3 is gone, 1 and 2 is enough. However, if player 2 drops out, player 1 and player 3 are enough. But if player 1 drops out, right? If player 1 drops out, then we have a different situation. If player 1 drops out, players 2 and 3 are not enough. That means in this particular one, only player 1 is critical. All right. And it turns out to be the same situation in the next one. If player 4 drops out, we're fine. Let me mark that down. If player 4 drops out, player 1 and player 2 are enough. Well, it's actually not exactly the same, because if player 2 drops out, player 1 and 4 would be 6 plus 2, and that would not be enough. That would only be 8. That means that this time P2 is critical and P1 is critical. Now, if we look at the next winning coalition, if player 4 drops out, is P1 and P3 enough? 6 plus 4? Yes, that means P4 is not critical. What about P3? If they drop out, then it's player 1 and player 4. 6 plus 2 is not enough. That means we have to have player 3. So player 3 is critical, and of course, player 1 is critical. And the last one, it's 5 plus 4 plus 2. If any one of the 3 players drop out, you will not have 10. And that means we have to have everybody. So everybody is critical in that particular coalition. So the ones that I've highlighted in yellow are critical in those particular coalitions. And like I said, we're going to use that in a future video. So I'm going to give you a chance to work one right now, right? In this example, the system is a quota of 5. The players' weights are 3, 2, 1, 1. I want you to find all of the winning coalitions. Take a moment to do that. Remember, there's 1 player, 2 player, 3 player, and in this case, 4 player. And then in each one, which players are critical. Okay, now that you've looked at that example, let's take a look at one last example. In the 1960s, the Nassau County Board of Supervisors operated as the weighted voting system with a quota of 58, and the weights were 31, 31, 28, 21, 2, and 2. This is an actual real-life example. There were a total, if you count them, 6 players on the board. List all of the winning coalitions. Now, when you have a lot of players like this, the more players you have, the more difficult it is to find all of the winning coalitions, all right? You can see right off the bat that player 1 is not a dictator, so we don't have any 1 player, but we might have 2 player winning coalitions, and we do actually, all right? If you take the first 2 players, 31 plus 31, that's enough. That's 62. So player 1 and player 2 would be a winning coalition. All right. If you take, you grab my calculator. If you take the player 1 and player 3, right? 31 plus 28, that would be 59. So that would be enough as well. So it'd be player 1 and player 3. You might check next player 1 and player 4, 31 plus 21. That's 52. That's not enough. So then the last one I would do is consider what if player 1 isn't in the picture, just player 2. And you can also find a winning coalition with player 2 and player 3. All right, because that's the same numbers. 31 plus 28 is 59. That's enough. I do not believe there are any other winning coalitions. That's the only ways that we can win with 2 players. All right, 3 players. Wow. Again, like I said, you can take these and you can just tack on 1 more player and automatically be a winning player. So for example, if P1 and P2 was already a winner, then you could just tack on P3. Or you could just tack on P4, right? Or you could just tack on P5 and so on. And you would have to do that for each one of those winning coalitions. You might find out that there's a bunch of these, right? And you're like, whoa, I almost feel like I need a computer to figure all those out. And similarly for 4 player, it would be kind of challenging to write them all down. 5 player winning coalitions. And then there's only 1 6 player winning coalition. That's the grand coalition. That just includes everybody. So I'm going to see, instead of listing them all, we're just going to take a look at a few examples to decide whether they're winning or not. All right. And then what you would do, we're not going to do it on this video. What you would do is you would decide which players are critical in each of those. And that would be a big task because you would have quite a long list. And that's basically what the Nassau County Board of Supervisors did for a number of years until they changed their voting system. I hope that in this video, you've learned a little bit more about how to find winning coalitions and critical players.